good old school hospitality. You know, it's often lost, and I think, you know, we sort of need to breed it back into the industry as a whole. But just bringing those simple elements of hospitality back in is what we really want to focus on.
Pubs are such an important feature of the Australian dining, drinking, living landscape. But where are they at now? What part do they play in the hospitality industry for punters, but also for staff? Today we are talking to publican Vincent Magrath. He leads the recently relaunched Central Club Hotel in Melbourne. Vincent, welcome to Dirty Linen.
Dani, how are you? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm great and really excited about this chat because we're going to get into some industry nitty-gritty as well as talk about the place of pubs in the dining world these days. Let's set the scene for us. Tell us a bit about the Central Club Hotel and what you're up to there at the moment.
Yeah, great. So Central Club is it's another one of those Melbourne corner pubs that's had a revamp essentially. It's happened quite a lot. We've seen over the last sort of 10 years, these prominent corner sites have been bought up by either developers or people with, you know, grand plans, and whether or not the hospitality element remains on the ground floor is never certain. Our building was purchased in 2017, and it was always the intention by the owners, who are the ANMF, the Nursing Federation, to keep the hospitality on the ground floor. So it's a building that's steeped in history. The first reference of a liquor license in this building we can find is 1869. So it's been licensed for over 150 years. Now it's gone through different hands along the way, and we've gone through all the press clippings that we can find in the archives to figure out, you know, who had it for what period of time. It had different sort of faces. The owners of the building until 2017 actually had it for 42 years. So there's a whole heap of history behind those guys, and they're actually still in the industry. They still own the building that houses the North Melbourne, I've completely got out of my head now. I can't remember. The courthouse. So they still own the courthouse, which actually opened up 2 days before we did.
Yeah, it's all happening.
I know, yeah. North Melbourne was completely dead for 2.5 years or 3 years. Neither of our buildings had a business in them. And then within a week, we're both open at the same time. So, which is great, because it gives, when things like that happen together like that, it gives the whole place a boost. And we've heard from so many locals that North Melbourne was missing, was missing a good local. It was missing a good pub. And all of a sudden, like a bus, you're waiting so long for one to arrive and two arrive at the same time. So we've been getting lots of great feedback that both of us and the courthouse have given the whole area a bit of a lift. But yeah, like I said, we took over the building in 2017. We ran the business, ran it through COVID, and then knew that we'd have a 2.5 year or 3 year build. So we got it done in just about 2.5 years. We took over the building from the three owners, like I said, who had it for over 40 years. It was three brothers who were sort of superstars in the North Melbourne hospitality industry in their own right. They had a really loyal followers. It was a very different pub to what we have now. It was very much a drinking pub. It was an early opener. We've still got a 6 a.m. license, but it was an opener. They used to open at 6 a.m. And that was particularly for the market traders across the road. We're just right across from Queen Victoria Market. So the original license would have been granted for that reason, by 6 a.m., most of the market workers have done half a day's work. That's their lunch break time. So we took over from them. We wanted to really make sure that when we had our plans and we were designing what we've eventually designed, that we took into account what had happened in the building before. We got as much of the history from the guys, and we actually worked with the previous owners a lot. It's the Adoni brothers. And they came out of high school to work in the business with their dad, who bought the building in the 60s. And two of them actually never worked anywhere else. That's all they ever did, was work in the Central Club Hotel until they sold it in 2017. So being able to tap into what they had learned about the building and what had happened in the building and the different sort of, they ran it a couple of different ways. They didn't always have the 6 a.m. open, but they went back to it after a while. So it was really interesting to chat to them and then try and put some of their history back into the new build. And we've done that in a number of different ways. They actually gifted us a grandfather clock that was in the building when their father purchased it in the 60s. So that we have that downstairs in what we call our depot bar. We've got a cocktail bar downstairs that we're hoping to open soon. And that grandfather clock is sitting there, and that sort of reminds us every day of what's happened in the building before us. We're definitely not the first custodians of this building. There's a lot of history that's gone behind us, and we want to really pay respect to that and try and implement that into what we're doing moving forward.
Wow, what an interesting tale. I know that at least for some of that time they ran it as a band venue, because in a previous life I was a roadie, and I remember carrying amps in and out of that building, and I think working a lighting desk. So it certainly has had a lot of incarnations. But how amazing to go in there and, I guess, think about those layers and also respect them when you refashion the pub.
Yeah, 100%. And we want to make sure that it does remain as a pub, and that was one of our big, when we're given this blank canvas, and so the building's got a heritage overlay on it, on the facade. So the facade was the only thing that was going to remain. So we had a blank canvas. We wanted to make sure, though, that we still produce the bones of what is a corner pub. And to me, there's sort of a layout that most traditional corner pubs would have, and this pub did have it. This building had it when we took it over in 2017. It had those three separate areas. It had the public bar in the front where all the drinking went on. There was a pool table in there as well. So, and I reckon there was a few barneys used to happen over the pool table, which happens in most venues. People don't like having their own rules that they can't stick to. Then there was a middle bar, which was higher tops and more casual, and then there was a bistro out the back. So we knew that because of what was going above us, that there'd be an open plan on the ground floor, but we tried to stick to those three defined areas that you should kind of find in a normal, in a traditional pub. And I took a bit of sort of a bit of notice of what others were doing quite well in the industry who still had those areas. So there's plenty of pubs that do, the casual dining and the beer drinking and maybe even the TAB in the front bar and the middle bar, and they've got the more serious dining that happens at the back. There's a few examples that, come to mind pretty quickly, like Lamaro's or even the Graham Hotel in Port Melbourne now are doing it very well. So I wanted to have that structure, but we had an open plan design. So we've still, and without signposting it, we still sort of have that flow where the drinkers, we sort of want to go one way into one part of the building. And then there's the more high tops for the casual dining up along the Victoria Street end. And then at the back of the building up towards the kitchen and in on a dogleg right, we sort of have the more formal dining, and we set that with dinnerware, we set that with glassware. So if you're coming in for more of a formal sit down or a business lunch or dinner, that's generally where we're seating those kind of guests.
It's so interesting hearing you talk about it. It makes me think of the way house design has changed as well, where we've got more of that open plan, the living and the dining sort of blends into one. What is it that keeps pubs relevant? So much has changed in the way that we eat, but why does it still work to have this classic structure?
It's funny. I don't know. It's definitely changed. I think the pub culture, from what I can see, is, and I've been in the industry here for 16 years. It's definitely changed. I think they're definitely more food focused, and that's something that operators, and we really had to pay attention to, is that I think just having an average pub classics menu now it doesn't cut it. People aren't. I think for a long time, food in pubs was secondary to what else was going on, like drinking or punting or the pool table or whatever else. Whereas now I think food is the focus. So I think you really have to pay as much attention to your menu and have your menu down pat and have it, so that it suits quite a few different demographics. And then the drinking from my end is kind of secondary. We've got enough stats now. We've got 4 months of stats to show us that it's pretty much 50-50 our food sales and our drink sales. Now, traditionally, that wouldn't have been the case. It was always weighted more towards the drink sales. So to me, having the food balance is really, really important. I think you have to be family friendly now as well. I think you have to be friendly to all different demographics. Everyone's going to the pub now. The pub isn't seen just as, like I said, as that drinking spot that people go to for 10 pints. It's a real social gathering spot. It's where people are meeting up. we found in particular on a Sunday, because of where we're positioned, we're sort of halfway between a lot of people, a lot of places. So it's a good halfway point for families to meet. So we're seeing tables booking on a Sunday that have got 3 or 4 generations coming out for lunch. So you have to cater for all those. If you're a dingy pub that's only serving, pints and there's racing on in the corner, that's not going to suit your granny who wants to come out and see the grandkids for Sunday lunch.
That's so interesting. There's so many points I'd like to pick up on. But one of those, let's start with the menu, because I think it's so... I agree. Like, I think you can't just see a pub classics menu. You want to see a bit of variety, a bit of interest. I suppose you want to see that the kitchen is thinking about the food. It's not just like, just a series of, box ticking exercises when you put together a menu. But then I want to see that. But then so often I'll be like, but you know what I really want? I just want a parma. So let's talk about this parma index. Like, where does the parma sit in your pub, and where does it sit? Has the price of it had to change? Like, let's go deep on the parma.
Yeah, well, I think we should, because it's like you just mentioned there, the chicken parma index. It is a thing, and I think the Financial Review wrote it up about 2 weeks ago and showed an index of how the price of the parma has changed. And there's so much you can get from that. That doesn't show you just that chicken's gone up. It shows you that there's a whole heap of factors in the industry that are impacting on the price of the prized parma. And the parma really is an indicator of what's happening, I think, in your business as a pub. We've got 42 items on our menu, right? And I lost sleep over, what we put together on the menu, what goes in, what shouldn't go in. Are we going to have too many items? Now, we do sell through the menu quite a bit. And I think one of the things that I've said in the past, the first day we opened properly to the public, we sold one of every one of those 42 menu items, which was a really good indication that we had got it right. And since then, nothing has really missed. There hasn't been anything that we've gone, oh, well, that needs to come off. So that was a good indication that we had the spread right. But in saying that, even though we're selling through all those items and every item's holding its own and every section on the menu is holding its own, our number one seller is the chicken parma. Our number two seller is the chicken schnitzel. So between those two chicken fillets on a plate with chips and salad, it's doing about 35% of the volume of food that we're doing. So it's, it is an indicator that when people go to the pub, they want to keep things, some people want to keep things simple. In saying that, we're finding with our locals, we're finding that we're seeing them 2 to 3 times a week. We got a good loyal base already, some of which we had before, some of whom we had in before. They're coming in for a parma on a Tuesday or Wednesday night. They're coming back with their friends for the steak on a Saturday night, or back in with the family for one of our specials or our market fish on a Sunday. So whilst they're coming in for the parma, they're not just coming in for that. They're coming in for that on their first trip of the week, but then their second visit of the week, they're coming for something else, for a different part of the menu. The price of the parma we can focus on. Like 5 years ago, what was a chicken parma? $19? Most places were doing a parma special at $15. The thought of a decent venue getting a chicken parma of any sort of decent quality on a plate for $15 now is just not, it's not possible. You just can't. There's so many indications now, so many factors that drive that price to $28, $29. And that, even at that, we're holding at $28. I've kept a very keen eye on what everybody's doing in the industry and what the price of the parma is, and the parma index that you mentioned. And 28 is now becoming very hard. 29, it's not going to be long before the average price is $30. I know there have been some headlines of places, that are already at the $30, $32 mark. Are people still going to come to the pub for a parma when it's $30?
I don't know. If you really want it, or if you go through the menu and the other main courses are 38, it's a reality, isn't it? Talk about all the costs that are going into putting that parma on a plate.
Yeah, there's a whole heap of things that have increased in price, not just the raw materials. All of our utilities have gone up, insurances have gone up, and obviously staff costs have gone up as well. And that's a sort of a factor that the industry as a whole needs to and has had to deal with over the last few years. I think the playing field has been leveled in that regard, which is great. Since COVID, there's been a few changes. Obviously, there's been law changed as well. It's, the Wage Theft Act has come into play since COVID, which is great. It means now that operators have to be doing the right thing. So the $15 parma going on a plate isn't a thing anymore because they have to pay their staff properly now, and that wasn't happening in the industry. There were too many dark horses in the industry that weren't doing the right thing, that made it difficult for those like ourselves who are doing the right thing to compete on price. Whereas now the playing field has been leveled, and everybody in the industry is paying what they should be, and so this is having an impact on price. But this is where the prices need to be. If hospitality staff are being paid correctly and treated correctly, this is the price of putting a parma on a plate, and we, as an industry, we have to accept that.
It's really, really interesting to hear you say that the Wage Theft Act has had such an impact, because people are only, I guess, found guilty under those laws if they've deliberately underpaid. So, I mean, we know that the award is complex and people do get caught out with some of the detail around that and inadvertently underpay. But you're saying that people have been deliberately underpaying until that law came in.
I don't think it's a secret that the industry had a lot of that going on, to be honest. And I think there were operators that were not paying the right thing. I mean, and this is why laws like this had to come into pass. I think for staff in hospitality now, the great benefit has been that there's been a shortage of staff. There have been these changes that have made operators pull up their socks, and actually do things properly. And it actually put the staff members in hospitality in a really good driving seat to be able to choose the right employer and not just take this for being the norm, that people were being underpaid or not being paid their super, or being asked to do extraordinary amounts of hours and only get paid for 38 hours a week. I think now employees have got the ability to choose the right employer, and to choose the employer that's doing the right thing, that actually looks after them and looks after their balance. And I think those that are doing that, we like to think we're in that kind of category, are reaping the rewards of having better staff, and staff that actually will hang around longer, will want to stay in the business. That in itself, having staff that regularly see time and time again and gel together as a team and get to know the workings of the business, then that can only have a positive impact on the business as it runs over time. And I think now, if you're not doing that as an employer, I don't think you're going to be getting the best staff that are out there in a tight industry where staff are actually hard to come by.
Well, I mean, do you think that those different conditions will also draw people into the industry, or you won't have that attrition that's been really common, where people perhaps have families and think, it'd be nice to see them occasionally? Like, do you think it means that not only will you have staff that stick around longer at your business, but that they'll stay in the industry in general?
100%, absolutely. I mean, if you were a chef 10 years ago looking into the industry, I mean, the prospect of having a work balance or a family balanced life was just non-existent, I don't think. I mean, I think even the working conditions, I think, that you were sort of expected to work in were a lot different to now. Now you can actually have a really positive career, go into it, and know that it's a career that you can go on into your family life, and or even have interests outside of work. I mean, there were plenty of conditions that the industry didn't allow for anyone in hospitality in a full-time role to actually have any other interests, because they just had to work so much. Now staff, I think, have got that balance. They have the ability to, I think as a whole, the hospitality staff industry are a lot, they're more into sports. They've got more time to actually do things for themselves. They come back into work refreshed, and there's not this, we've got most of our full-timers doing their full-time working week in 4 days. They've got 3 days to actually kick back and relax and, get into their sports or get into their hobbies, or go back and see their family interstate for a couple of days and then come back to work and do their 4 days. I think the prospect of working in the kitchen now is a lot. Kids now will look back, will look at at chefing in a different way than they would have 10 or 15 years ago. I think it's a much better opportunity career-wise for those coming out of culinary schools.
So, I mean, as we've alluded to, the costs get passed down the line and they just have to be passed on to customers for the business to operate. But then pubs have always been a democratic place where, like the stall fruit, guys working at the fruit stall across the road can come in and have their knockoff and, and get a good feed at a good price. Like, how do you balance that sort of democratic place that pubs have in our culture with the need to, reflect the realities of doing business at every step along the chain?
I think that if you can be open, and sort of transparent with, how we put our prices on a menu, we often get asked why our carton draft is the price it is, and then there's a local lager that's $1.50 less a pot, and we'll just be transparent and just, it all comes down to how we buy it, the relationships that we have with the suppliers and the suppliers that are willing to work with us. And, we've been able to build, even in the short time we were in the business before our build, we were able to build really good relationships with the suppliers. When you do that and you become a loyal customer of your suppliers, then you will get the ability to do good deals with them, and therefore pop stuff on the menu that offers more value than those who don't work well with you, So I think being able to pass that on, and we are a small, tight-knit crew that I pass on all of our business details like that with our staff so that they know how it works. Eventually, you want your staff to be either taking over the reins in some of your element of the business or going on and doing their own thing. So, for them learning how that works and then even passing that on to the customers. If customers know that something costs us X and we charge Y for it, and that's just our margin and our costs, then there's never going to be an issue. If we buy something for $10 and we're charging $120 on the wine list for it, then your customers are going to look at every single thing you do. So I think just having a sort of an honesty and a transparency with those who are interested to know it is the way to go. And I'm always happy to talk through that kind of thing with customers who are interested,
We associate pubs with beer, but I'd love you to talk about wine and cocktails. I mean, where are punters sitting with their drinks at the moment?
Really interesting, and I love stats. I love, we've got every POS system now can spit out every single report that you want and graphs, and I love digesting this. I believe, and I think this is sort of happening in the industry, but the volume that's being consumed is obviously down, and we've all seen the numbers on that. But I don't think people's spend is coming down in a proportionate rate. People are happy to spend the same amount, I believe, on 2 or 3 drinks of quality, something that they might get a bit of a story behind, or, it's a locally produced from a smaller artisan producer, and spend the same on 2 or 3 of those than, 5 or 6 pints of a mass-produced beer. So we have found our cocktails and wine sales are outweighing our beer sales, which you would assume in a traditional pub that would be the other way. And that's by value and by volume as well. So we have got a bit of a wine focus. Our spirits are all Australian as well. So we have got a good cocktail program that Sam Rose, our GM, runs. So when you're producing, good wine and good spirits, and we're continually putting things on by the glass that we hand sell. So our locals are now getting in the habit of asking us what we have open today. It's not just the 15 or 16 wines that are on the list by the glass. We've always got something special. So I think people are, when we're doing the hard yards to bring decent booze to people's tables, they're willing to spend on it. They don't necessarily want to stick to, like I said, the 10 pints of mass-produced beer. So it's definitely a trend that I think I'm seeing in the industry as well, that people are more health conscious as well. People are more likely to sit on 2 or 3 glasses of wine than 5 pints of beer for the health purpose also.
And I'm sure that plays into the atmosphere in the pub. I mean, not that you can't get drunk off wine and cocktails and, get a bit rowdy, but when you're talking about the grandma who's there to see the grandchildren and everyone around her is sipping on $25 glasses of wine, then I guess that sort of feeds into the atmosphere that you want to create.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, you sort of want it to be a place that everybody can come into. There are plenty of places if you want to go and watch the races and have a punt and have a bit of a shout. There are plenty of public bars still in Melbourne that you know you're going to get that atmosphere in. Ours is not one of those. Ours is more of a sort of a it's a food focused decent pub where you can meet your mate for a glass of wine or a pot of beer, or you can have lunch with the family and your grandmother can sip on $25 glasses of single vineyard Pinot. So it's and I think that's the offer. That's the offer that we have. Without trying to be something for everyone, we're definitely not. We haven't got a TAB. We haven't got a pool table. Our sports are on, live and loud sporadically. So you're not always going to come in and find the AFL on live and loud. So I think we're different in a sense to some traditional pubs. But I guess we're food focused and service focused. That's the one thing as well that I really wanted to bring the element into this this establishment was good old school hospitality. It's often lost, and I think we sort of need to breathe it back into the industry as a whole. Just really simple. I don't know if the industry in Melbourne became complacent and we forgot how to say hello to guests as they came in, or we forgot to say thanks for coming in. But just bringing those simple elements of hospitality back in is what we really want to focus on. Good service. We make sure all of our staff know their SH1T about what we're putting in a glass or putting on a plate. So we have a huge element of training that goes in, and we just want to make sure that when the staff are happy and feel like they're confident with everything on the list and confident with the way we want service to be, that flows into the customer. The customer then doesn't have to think when they come in. The customer sort of comes in and relaxes, and we do the heavy lifting for them.
Vincent, I'd love to track back to the build of the venue and the way that you've renovated it. There was obviously a lot of respect paid to the people that had been there for so long before, but how did that feed into a sustainable build?
So yeah, it was very much, and again, partnering with the building owners, the ANMF, the Nursing Federation, have got a huge sustainability program within the branch, and they wanted to make sure that this build was done as sustainably as possible, not just using materials that forevermore would be sustainable, but also using material from the original building in the new build. So we partnered with the architects for Bailey Ward. Bailey Ward then brought in a projects team called Revival, based out of Collingwood. Revival came in and basically took away any materials from the original building at the time of demolition, took them away. They became the custodians of it. That's the term that they use. And then throughout the project, they advised us as to where they could use those materials again. So they took out timber that was in the building for 140 years. There was Jarrah, there was Oregon there that was 110 years old, that we've basically put back into the building. So all of our joinery, our tabletops are all made from the old ceiling joists, the timber flooring that was in the original building, bringing more of that history back in, like I said earlier, bringing that history of what has happened in the building back into the new building. We managed to salvage the old keg chute. So the wooden keg chute that was in there for 70 or 80 years, that all the barrels of beer went down into the cellar, that's beautiful Jarrah as well. So we've actually made all of our charcuterie boards and our cheese boards from that, using that material. The building itself is Passive House certified. Passive House is a German certification for how a building, it's generally how residential new builds are built in terms of sustaining energy within the building and using as little energy as possible. A lot of passive house homes are now being built without any heating or cooling. And they're built in a way that they will maintain a constant temperature without having to use any energy to do that. So the building, the levels 2 to 7, which is where the ANMF have got the short stay accommodation for their members, that's 100% passive house. So it's built in a way that it's essentially airtight and uses very little energy to heat and cool those hotel rooms. So it's the first commercial building to have that sustainability certification. It was also built using CLT, which is cross-laminated timber. So instead of using a steel structure, it's actually it's a timber structure that actually holds the building up. Again, that's a very sustainable practice. It's a lot more sustainable than using steel. So the whole building, and even in our practices now, all of our food scraps, and this is happening in a lot of places now, but all of our food scraps, any of our sort of stuff that comes back off the plate is going into a composter. We're making sure that as much as we can, and you can buy a lot of our local spirits, even like we buy spirits from Starwood. We have a distillery down in South Wharf who provides some of our spirits in 20 litre, 5 litre, 10 litre drums, and we just get one glass bottle and we refill that. And for those practices now, so the building itself being so sustainably built and so much thought being put into the design of how we can, reuse all those materials that made our tabletops on our bar would have gone to landfill ordinarily, but they were reclaimed out of the old building. So, but we've made sure that our ongoing practices are as sustainable as we can be, and as new things pop up and we can do more, we can use less glass, we'll do that.
That's incredible. And I mean, it's a great, I feel like that's also going to feed into staff engagement. Like, it's just, there's such good stories to tell, but also a business that I'm sure people feel like, it's a business for the future.
Well, we hope so. I mean, and that's, we're here for the long term. And I think, we've had a brand new start. We have got grand plans to do a lot in the building, but the building itself needs to generate its own history, which it has to this day. We want to be part of the next sort of story, and we want to make sure that people are, and we still have people coming into the place looking around going, God, this has changed. I haven't been here in a while. And you're like, well, when's the last time you were here? People have been coming to this pub on a trip to Melbourne over decades. We've got people who've come into us now, haven't been in 10 years, but their average length of time between trips is 10 years, so it's a building that people have known it's there forever. We want to make sure that we're there forever and that they do keep us on their 10-year trip cycle. Because of our positioning across from Queen Vic Market, we get a lot of, tourist trade at the weekends. And the building is on people's pit stop. They go to the Queen Vic Market, they go to that pub across the road for a pint. And they're usually expecting those three brothers who owned the place for 45 years to be there, and they get a little bit of a surprise when they see the place opened up and there's no pool table, but they get a warm welcome, and we sometimes have to convince them to stay. But once they stay and they have the chat, then we talk about the previous owners and tell them, well, they might actually come in. They're often in the building. They come in and see us all the time, and then you'll have a producer from the market that they'll recognise. We love the fact that as many of the traders that we buy from come over and have a few pots at the bar, and I will often be spotted on the floor telling a table of four or whatever who've ordered 4 chicken parmas that's the chicken guy. That's Luke. He does your chickens, or that's our beef. That's the guy from Hagen's, and that's your oyster guy. And that to me really is the personality of the pub. It's got that. We've got this beautiful horseshoe shaped bar, which is something that I took from a place in Dublin actually. I believe that a proper bar needs to have that horseshoe shape so that people can just sit around and chat. Now, whether you want to or not, you can sit in the corner on your own and read the paper, or if you want to chat and you're at one of these bars, it's hard not to talk to your neighbour. So we'd often have 5 or 6 different market traders sitting around the bar, and then you'd have a random tour, a couple of people who are here on holiday will end up chatting to the chicken guy, or they'll end up chatting to the oyster guy.
Ah, that's just gold. We could talk for hours. There are so many stories, but I want to just touch on one last thing, which is the accommodation above the pub. Not the nurses bit, which is fantastic, but the rooms that you're developing for anybody. I mean, so many pubs have got these rooms that used to be accommodation, but they're so rarely used these days. Tell us your thinking behind opening them up as accommodation.
I think there's a lot of these rooms. Like most corner pubs in Melbourne have got a level 1 with rooms in them, and those initially those rooms would have been built as places for lodgings, be it long term or short term. When we took over the building, we had 11 rooms on level 1, and there were 3 or 4 long termers in there, and then the rest of the rooms were full of broken furniture, tables, stock, crap, files that were never going to get opened again. And we decided, what, there's a revenue stream here that I think, we could use, particularly with our location. So we knew we only had a short period of time. We tidied them up, we put a lick of paint on them, put in some IKEA furniture and started to sell them. Now, we only had shared bathrooms, but we made it really, really clear in our advertising that you're in a pub across from up from the hotel. it's shared bathrooms. We really played it down, in fact, and we had ripped out 2 ceilings in the pub to sort of create some atmosphere. So there was very little insulation between level 1 and the ground floor. So we would even, in our advertisements, we would even tell people you could hear a conversation on table 10 downstairs if you're staying above. So, you know, if you're a light sleeper, don't book. So, but we did really, really well, I think, and we figured out that because of the charm of staying above a pub, and there's lots of visitors that don't need to come to a hotel or don't need, you know, all the bells and whistles. They're coming down for the footy or coming down for the racing. They really just need a bed for the night before they head back up home. So when we were designing this, we had the opportunity to put more, you know, pub space or hospitality on level 1. But I thought, you know what, let's keep the bones of what a traditional pub has and keep those rooms. So we've got 8 rooms, which are just about to soft launch. Actually, grand final weekend, we've got our first guests in there. They're 8 what we're calling micro hotel rooms. And we sort of want to play it down a bit again, because they're not massive. They are small. They're between 18 and 25 square meters. And I think a key that I've learned in selling accommodation is that you really need to be honest with what people are getting. The first 5 minutes that guests check into your accommodation is really going to determine whether or not they enjoy their stay. And if you've oversold a room or the size of a room, or used tricky photography to make a room look like it's three times the size that it is, you're just setting yourself up for a very difficult experience for the guest, because they've got this expectation and you've sort of oversold them something that's not going to meet that. So I'm using the term micro so that automatically people know you're not getting a huge hotel room. And then we're going to play on the charm of staying above a pub. You know, we've actually got some beer focused art that's going into the pub, and we're really playing on letting people know that you're above a really good pub. So whenever you need to, you know, chill out, come downstairs for a drink and chat to Aaron at the bar.
That sounds great. How much are the rooms?
So they'll be focused on market. They'll be kind of tracking the market price. So they'll be anywhere between 150 and 220 per night. They've all got en suites in them as well. So the shared bathrooms thing is gone. That's why we've reduced our footprint from 11 down to 8 to ensure they've all got en suites. But depending on the market price for what it is, it'll track the market. But it'll be affordable, and there'll be a couple of beers on arrival in the fridge for those who do stay with us.
Oh, it sounds so good, Vincent. I just love everything you're saying. It really makes me want to come to the pub. So that's good, isn't it? I'm thinking, is there a reason I could need to stay there? I don't know, but no, it all sounds really, really great. So good to have a chat. Really, we could talk for hours. So let's catch up another time again and dig into more good pub tales. But thank you so much for taking the time to talk us through the Central Club Hotel today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Dani. It's been awesome. Thanks for listening.
This is Dirty Linen, and I'm Dani Valent. We air the issues that the hospitality industry finds hard to talk about, hearing from different people with unique perspectives. We want to hear from you as well. If you have something that needs to be said about a topic, get in touch so we can include your perspective. Contact us at dirtylinen@deepintheweeds.com.au or hit us up on Insta at Dirty Linen Podcast. We can't wait to hear from you.